So for whoever just joined, warm welcome. This is Federica. I'm part of the DocCity team, and it's my pleasure to welcoming you all to this live webinar. We are connected with Webster University Geneva to talk about the future of migration policy with the Masters in Migration, Climate Change and the Environment. We have our speakers connected, and it will be my pleasure to leave the floor to Jubin Godarzi, Associate Professor and Active Director of the International Relations Programs, who will be actually presenting at Webster University and will give us a first overview of the master program. And then Dina will take over. And don't forget, there is also Jessica here connected with us, able to answer all the questions that you might have regarding the program as well and the admission process. So Jubin, I leave you the floor, and we look forward to receiving all of your questions into the Q&A box.
Yes, thank you very much, Federica. Good afternoon or good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this online event, which has been organized in collaboration with, thanks to the efforts of DocCity and also Webster University. We're very glad to have you. I'm Jubin Godarzi, as Madam Coco said, the acting director of the International Relations Program here at Webster. I've been here just over 15 years, and prior to entering academia, I was working as a political advisor consultant with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees between 1996 and 2007, and worked at also various think tanks, research institutes, and foundations in Washington, New York. So it's a pleasure to have you. To my right, we have the co-director for the program for this newly program we're launching, a Master's in Migration, Climate Change and Environment. These are very important and topical issues, as you all know. So we're going to give a presentation. I'm going to share the screen in a few moments with you and go over a little bit in terms of about Webster University and our programs, and then my esteemed colleague Dina UNESCO is going to talk about, of course, migration, the future of migration policy, and of course, what's on offer. So I'm going to share the screen. Hope you can all see it.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So yes, welcome to you all to this program. We're actually in a room, in a conference room, where you can actually see this view at Webster University, Geneva. We are a campus. We're a satellite campus. We were established here in 1978, so we've been here for 44 years. The first campus that Webster University St. Louis established in Europe, and now we have 4 other campuses in Europe and also in different parts of the world. So we've started programs in Uzbekistan. We have our programs in Leiden and Vienna since the 1980s. We have a program in China, one in West Africa, in Accra, and also a program which has started not too long ago in Athens, Greece. So we have a number of campuses. We have a prominent international presence. And one of the advantages that we offer is our students can basically go between campuses to study there, take courses in different campuses, being exposed to different views, perspectives from the professors, the faculty, and also where they are, the different countries they're located in. With regard to Webster University, just to inform you, we are an American university. We're an American accredited university. We have several intakes of students, and our student body and our faculty and staff body is very diverse. Our classes are usually very small, which is an advantage, some anywhere from 5, 10 to maximum 25 students. So if there are more than 25 students, we usually create another section. And as I said, our student body is also quite diverse. We have over 50, 60 different nationalities, even in the Webster Geneva campus. And I will also speak about some other issues in due course, and Dina UNESCO, my esteemed colleague, with regard to what we have to offer in terms of financial aid for those in need, and also events, and also with regard to our career services office, One of our major advantages, of course, is we're in Geneva, which of course is in a sense the most international city, if not the most international city in the world, in terms of having over 270 international organizations and NGOs, and there are over 180 diplomatic missions. And we have a worldwide alumni network of over 180,000 graduates. Our department offers degree programs on the bachelor's level, bachelor's in international relations, and we also offer a bachelor's in two emphases. One is in migration and refugee studies, and of course Geneva is the center, ideal place for studying migration and refugees, since we have the International Organization of Migration, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, and many other international organizations and also NGOs which deal with this. We also have an emphasis in international economics. But of course, with regard to what we're talking about, we're launching this autumn a new master's in migration, climate change, and the environment. So we'll speak about that, cover that in due course. Our faculty also, just as like our student body, is quite diverse. We have faculty members from various nations, from Hungary, from Switzerland, from France, from the United States, Italy, Germany, the Czech Republic, Finland, Iran, and many others. And one of the advantages that we have is that our faculty members have doctorates, and also they are very much linked to the Geneva scene in terms of migration, human rights, refugees. So, for example, we have one of our faculty members, for example, was an ICRC delegate for many years in Prominent International Hire. We have faculty members who've worked for the International Organization of Migration, the Swiss Foreign Ministry, the UN Commission for Human Rights. We have another faculty member who right now is a legal advisor for Pope Francis. And as I said, in terms of Dina's affiliation in the past with the IOM, my affiliation with UNHCR. So our faculty members basically not only give you the theory, present the theory, offer the theory, but also the practice and the realities of what is happening in the world in terms of policies implemented by organizations, by NGOs, by governments, and what is happening on the ground. We have, well, although we're a small campus, we have over 40 events annually. Prior to COVID, of course, they were on campus or in Geneva. For example, in Geneva International Conference Center. During the pandemic, of course, they were all online, virtual, like this one. And of course, now we're going back to having events on campus, physical, in Geneva, and also continuing with hybrid, the different departments, whether it's international relations, media, psychology and counseling, business, et cetera, et cetera. Before turning over to my colleague Dina UNESCO, another key fact to point out is that annually we have a major international conference, which we organize here in Geneva, usually in the Geneva, it's been for the past several years in the Geneva International Conference Center, photo that you can see here, one of the conference halls there. It's our annual International Humanitarian and Security Conference. So we've had, it's an ongoing tradition for the past 26 years. And it's the largest event, Webster worldwide, and we invite speakers, experts, scholars from various universities, international organizations, and NGOs, whether the IOM, UNHCR, ICRC, IFRC, Doctors Without Borders, Human Rights Watch, etc. So, and our students participate in this. Our last conference this past autumn in November was on humanitarian action in the time of global crises, which covered, of course, the impact of the pandemic on humanitarian action and other issues, including with regard to climate change, how climate change is having an impact with regard to migration, population displacement, and humanitarian action. And this event is organized with the support and under the auspices of the government of the Canton Republic of Geneva, and of course the Swiss federal authorities. So we have their backing. So this is a major event, and our students and of course the community benefit from it. And over the past 2 years, in view of the pandemic, we've held it as a hybrid event. So people can benefit from it also online. So I think I will stop here and I will basically pass things on to my colleague Dina UNESCO, who will talk more in greater detail about the future of migration policy and the program. So with no further ado, Dina, you have the floor.
Yeah. Yes, hello everyone. So I'm very, very pleased to be here today and that we are at least in person. And thank you so much, Jubin. Thank you also, of course, to the organizers, to the university and to DocCity. So I'm Dina UNESCO. I'm here in the capacity of the co-director of this new master degree that we are launching this autumn, this fall. I come with my background, which is really much more from the practitioner side, from as a international civil servant. I work now with the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, but I worked very long time with the International Organization for Migration. I worked also with the OECD and in civil society. So that's what I bring to also to the event and to the program today. So what I continue now after the presentation from Jubin on giving you a view of the Webster Geneva campus and of the university, and also of the long history of this university in engaging in migration and refugee issues. It's a long tradition. So I have here a slide which is more about the vision. What is the vision for having this crazy idea to launch a new MA on migration, environment, and climate change? So the first part of the vision, it's really this idea to engage people, to realize that we need students, we need a new generation of people who is fully trained to be global citizens, but also to really look into this particular nexus, because over the past 30 years, we have worked so much on connecting issues of migration with issue of climate change and environmental degradation that there is a wealth of knowledge. And I think now it's the moment to have a whole new program really devoted to it that really takes stock on what we know already. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but use everything that has been developed over the past 30 years. But with this engagement of young people who want to be these global citizens, and less young, because the program is open to all ages. The second keyword I have on this slide is innovate. So the idea is to really have a fully dedicated program to climate migration. So including under this heading, really issues of displacement, all issues of human mobility in connection to climate change and also to environmental degradation. It's a reality of our times and a mega trend of the future. Third dimension in our vision, it's what I call the bridge. After working many years in the international community and receiving so many students doing internships with us, I really think we have to make an effort on bridging the link between the academic world and the professional world. And this program is really built on this vision that we will work together and that we will interact all the time with the professional world, in particular, of course, international Geneva, but beyond it. And I think this is key for me, that we also support, in fact, the professional world with adapted, relevant, up-to-date and really targeted research and knowledge and data development and understanding. For keyword, I put connect, because one of the key things about the nexus on migration, environment, and climate change is that it goes across areas and across disciplines. You can't just tackle migration and environment and climate change in isolation, in just one agenda, in just one area. You have to open up, and you are obliged to create a common language across very diverse disciplines, and it's very tough, I must say. I suffered from going in as a social scientist trained in political science and international relations into negotiation at the climate conferences that are very scientific, related really to climate change impacts, understanding even the degree discussion that we were having central at the COPs. So I think that we need this kind of programs, and that Webster has the chance to have this pluridisciplinary at hand. So you can touch on humanitarian issues, you touch on development issues, you touch on human rights. It's about international law, it's about refugee migration, it's about environment, understanding sustainability issues, resource management, urban issues, health. So it's really bringing this together while really staying focused on the nexus. My fifth key word is contribute, and it's to contribute really to, in fact, the objectives that the International Geneva has to remain a key platform for multilateral action. I think it's one of the objectives of this place here in our world, together with New York in parallel, to mirror in Geneva this UN vision for multilateralism today. And given what we are living at international level, I think multilateralism has a role to play and needs to be strengthened. And here in Geneva, it means a wide network of players. So you have really the diplomatic missions that represent their countries at the UN, but you have a wealth of civil society players, also many academic, private also players, and local actors. So that's the idea, also to support this multilateralism, and also to realize that Geneva is the hub for migration and climate change. That's very interesting to see. Geneva is the place where you have the platform on disaster displacement, you have the climate vulnerable forum, you have the internal displacement monitoring center, you have WMO, UNEP, and talking to the Human Rights Council, talking to IOM and to UNHCR. So it's a key space, and the program builds on that. And the last keyword you have on this slide is to advance, because it's also to advance in a way the work of the UN, to advance the work of national, local, regional players on migration, environment, and climate change. I gave also an example here that Webster is also a member of the United Nations Academic Impact program, which is key for us in terms of supporting and connecting to the UN, but also that at the last climate conference in Glasgow, a new work program on action for climate empowerment has been negotiated by states that puts education as a top priority. And I really believe that the program we are offering is totally aligned, in fact, with the objective of this Glasgow work program. So that's about the vision. I want to insist on this. It's a question also of values. Once it's central to promote through this program professionalism for young people and less young, and to really focus on values that make our workplace a good place to be in. And I think education is key to prepare students to face the realities of professional life. And this is something that is, for me as co-director of this program, I believe in this, and I will be very strong about this. So that's about the values and the vision. Here it's examples of the actual study program and graduate courses that some of them have been created for this master degree, in particular the one on migration studies, the one on migration, climate change, and the environment, also the international migration law, one with a very strong focus on the nexus, once again, the international also environmental law with the focus again on this nexus. I want to highlight also the migration and health with a very strong connection to climate change, which I think it's a very innovative program that I find will be extremely interesting to, again, in this pluridisciplinary vision we have. And then you have others that exist already here, in particular on research methods, but also on security issues, negotiation, humanitarian issues. So it's a very broad curriculum with electives, and we can have more details about that. So with this, we end up a bit the presentation on actually the master degree, and I open up, as it said in our program for the event today, with a few highlights on the timeliness of this program. Why such a master program is now fitting the international agenda. So I picked only 3 dimensions, so we are not too long and we have time for discussion. So I picked up 3 elements to present to you quick insights on how human mobility has been featured at the last climate conference and how this prepares us for the next one. Second, how it features in the international migration policy agenda. And third, how it features in the newly released, very recently released international panel on climate change, IPCC report. But all it's focused just on human mobility. These are huge processes, so we are trying to really target the understanding on migration and climate change. So this slide that you have here on the screen, it's really about human mobility in the climate change process. So where is it in the climate discussion? I think you all know that the road has been very long. It took us 19 climate conferences to speak of human mobility, but it took a long time to first even speak of social dimension of climate change in the discussion in the negotiation on climate change. And the first time that there has been a very strong community that came together of practitioners, states, international organization, researchers, advocacy, NGOs. It's around the COP15 in Copenhagen, where the first ever alliance on migration and climate change and the environment was created. And the road took us one by one like this over the COPs, slowly, always one step further on recognizing human mobility as migration, displacement, and planned relocation into different parts of the climate negotiations in the Adaptation 1, Cancun agenda, and then in the loss and damage part of the negotiation with the Warsaw Mechanism on Loss and Damage. The Paris Agreement has really recognized in its preamble the rights of migrants, which is a huge change, and we shouldn't really use that very strongly as an advocacy tool. And then also the Paris Agreement requested that there is a task force on displacement under the loss and damage program, the Warsaw Mechanism on Loss and Damage, connected to a work stream on human mobility under the executive committee of the Warsaw Mechanism on Loss and Damage. So all this since 2015, it has continued into evolving. So in Glasgow in 2021, many people have the impression that migration is not enough on the agenda. And I think you need to really understand the complexities also of this negotiation and other process, and to see that migration is anchored in the Paris Agreement and is anchored on the Glasgow Climate Pact that speaks of the rights of migrants, because the Glasgow Climate Pact uses the negotiated language of the Paris Agreement. So it's important to be able to read into all the decisions that have come out of Glasgow to understand how human mobility agenda is actually advancing. And what is at stake now, it's how we transform what is anchored there into action, how we step up action, how we finance, what does it mean? So at the last COP, I would highlight just that, not to forget that the Glasgow Climate Pact speaks of the rights of migrants, not to forget that there is a COP decision number 17 on the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage that doesn't show in an extraordinary way migration, but which in fact it's really the anchorage for our work on this topic. So there is a number of elements in these decisions that are here for practitioners to step up action on migration and climate change. There's the operationalization of what is called the Santiago Network, which is a capacity building and demand-driven support to states on loss and damage, including human mobility issues. The COP has also requested a new technical meeting on loss and damage that includes human mobility issues for 2022. And it has highlighted that there's a work stream on human mobility and the continuation of the task force on displacement. So for those practitioners who actually want to work on this, there are actual tools there to advance. Other elements I found extremely interesting from the last climate conference on migration is that the action on climate empowerment on education that gives to any area space to advance, a new platform on local communities and indigenous populations and people, which is a key space to advance migration issues, and a new UN Special Rapporteur on Climate Change position, which is also extremely important for migration displacement issues. I also highlighted the work at urban level with an initiative from the Mayor's Migration Councils that launched a very important climate and migration action plan. And I also highlighted here the work of the climate vulnerable countries that have released a declaration with a strong emphasis on migration, and the work on clean energy in displacement situation, which is also very specific and which is of key importance in connecting environmental issues and displacement issues. The second area is how climate change features in the migration process. So there, I just want to highlight that the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration that was negotiated and adopted in 2018 has this year the review forum, the International Migration Review Forum, in May. So it's this a key also opportunity for states to take stock whether they're advancing on migration, environment and climate change, but in the migration world. So the GCM has two key objectives that are important for our topic today. The first one is the objective 2 that recognizes, so this is a text, the first ever internationally discussed and negotiated and adopted text, though it's not a compulsory text, there is no obligation to deliver on it. But in the world of migration policy, it's a first goal to have an international text. And this text recognizes very strongly the environmental drivers. It recognizes in particular slow onset drivers of migration. So I think this is a very important objective. And objective 5 of the GCM is also key because it's about really migration policy. So this objective 5, it means that states are encouraged, because we acknowledge the negative adverse impacts of climate change, of environmental degradation, and of disasters. They are encouraged to open up regular migration pathways. And it's about innovation at migration level. So visas, counselor option, planned relocation, we are the heart of migration policy. And there are more and more examples. We don't have the time to go into any of those, but I think what I want to convey in this presentation is just this opportunity with the IMRF, with this review forum, to really see where we stand in terms of innovation, migration policy level to respond to the nexus on climate change and migration. And my last point and slide, it's really quick insights from the Climate Change 2022 IPCC report. And what my key message on this is also to realize that we have been through a long road. The first IPCC report in 1990 already said and triggered, in fact, really the work on climate change and migration, because it says that the gravest effect of climate change might be those of human migration, and already highlighted issues of coastal erosion and drought. And since then, every single IPCC report has tried with a community of advocates and researchers to push for a greater connectivity between climate and human dimensions. So this report is key because for the first time, it really analyzes climate change in connection to ecosystem biodiversities and human societies. And human mobility is fully in the picture of this report, both in the thematic areas and in the regions analysis. I don't have time to go into much detail. I wanted to highlight just a few elements that I found extremely interesting in this report. First of all, that the focus is on oceans, coastal zones, water, droughts, and ecosystems whenever there's a connection to migration, to human mobility and displacement. So I think it highlights what hazards, where we have research and where the hazards are clearly more connected to the migration, though each time there is a multi-dimension of migration. So it's always connected to something else, to health, to demography, to conflict, to resource use, to resource management. Other point I found extremely interesting is that the report says very clearly that disasters are the public face of climate change. And it's true that we have now very good data, also thanks to the work of IDMC in collaboration with many other partners on displacement due to climate change and due to disasters and due to natural hazards. Other point I found extremely interesting, it speaks very clearly of projections of population at risk, but not necessarily of migration. So that in fact, the vulnerable ones very often are the trapped population. And this report really integrates this dimension of trapped population, which is something that we had difficulties over the past years to really speak of when we speak of climate triggered migration, and that the most vulnerable sometimes are those who do not have the means to migrate, in fact. Another element that I found extremely interesting is that when you look in the report, you will have all the multiple dimensions of migration. At one point, it will speak of bilateral migration. One point, the importance of seasonal migration. Another time, short-term migration or risks for people who are already displaced and refugees. So it's very rich to dig in and extract knowledge and evidence on these different dimensions. Another point of extreme important interest is the link between migration and adaptation and household resilience and poverty, and also to realize that human migration can also be a consequence of adaptation. And this, I find it's also very interesting to highlight. Also, of course, planned relocation issues for coastal areas in particular, but issues also are urbanization and pastoralism, where we connect back with what I said also on the climate conference, that these topics are also on indigenous population, on oceans, and on cities. So you see there is an interconnection between the processes. And my last point is really that the report also highlights policy implications, so which I think it's interesting for education and for the degree as well. How we connect the education we offer to the policy implications. So there's a focus on climate resilient development pathways, but also they try to understand better the role of migration policy in projections, the role of local actors. I found extremely interesting that they recognize also the importance of loss and damage in the IPCC report, but also of health and conflict issues. So I stop here so we can have some time to discuss. And I encourage everyone to read the report. Very tiny report.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really wanted to thank Jupin and Dina for their presentation and for their time. Actually, while you were speaking, we started to receive some questions, and I like also to thank Jessica because I know behind the scenes she's helping answering to some of them. Moving actually more to the program, because lots of questions that we received were regarding the master program that we introduced at the very beginning. Actually wanted to ask, what sort of professional outcomes do you foresee for the students who would enroll into this program?
Maybe I can respond
Sure.
to this. Yes, I think we are looking, as I said, it's a very pluridisciplinary program, and I think that the outcomes are extremely diverse. So you can have a really international practitioner, of course, so it's all the civil servant space entering different agencies. In Geneva, you have such a wide range of agencies, as I mentioned before, some environment focused, some more human rights, social science, and migration and refugees. So that's one part. But also, I think you can have a national also civil servant entry point, so for the diplomatic service, but also practitioner at local level, and I think at regional level. Migration and climate change is moving faster at regional level, so you have regional entities like for West Africa, for Eastern Asia, for the Caribbean, that are really advancing on migration and climate change issues at policy level with very innovative migration policy and disaster also risk reduction policy. I think it's open for social sciences, but also for environmentalists who want to work with a better understanding of social sciences and of international relations. I really think that it's a very useful also program for the private sector, because you have more and more companies and foundation of companies and banks who are interested in the understanding of sustainability issues, of social responsibility, of environmental responsibility. So all this, I think it's also very connected. I also think we see a lot of demand on this topic at media and journalist level. So I think that's also where we actually need really well-informed people to be able to inform correctly also on this topic. I also see the whole advocacy world and the whole non-governmental world, but also services, for instance, to migrants as a space that I find extremely possible and interesting. There's also connection to the artist work. So we work very often also with artists, and that's also, I think, an opening up of how policy impacts art and how art can support policy. So I find, and of course you have all the researchers, data development, big data, tracking of migration, of displacement. So there are loads of opportunities, I think, in the research space. And as I said, for me, it's also humanitarian development, maybe health, also practitioners. If you have other ideas, but I think it's, I see a very wide range. Yeah.
It could also be a stepping stone for the masters for then going on to also to a doctoral program, if you want to specialize and do a doctoral dissertation thesis on a topic, an important, relevant topic relating to migration, climate change, and environment, and then in that sense, becoming an expert, and then both being able to be an instructor at the universities, also working in research institutes, government, international agencies, et cetera, to raise consciousness, awareness, and also engage in activism, policy advocacy.
Yeah. And law, yeah. I think also a lot of human rights. Exactly. I think human rights also space, it's key for this topic. And then law, international migration law in particular, but broadly more law issues and environmental law as well. So it can be connected to, it's an opening up to all these layers and levels. Yeah.
Perfect. So thank you so much. Actually, Before jumping into the questions, and I'd like to thank all the attendees because they wrote some interesting questions, we wanted to ask you a question. So we did present you a little bit the master program. So we actually were wondering if, there would be an interest in partnering with Webster University in these masters. So we're just going to ask you, so you will probably see on your screen that there is like a poll coming up. So just let us know if you're interested, or maybe you're not sure yet, and that's why we are here. As the speaker was telling us, is the first edition of this master program. So we are here to tell you more about professional outcomes, but also some other details. So very curious, just let us know. Well, I can see, just gonna share with the speakers, the majority actually said that to be interested in partnering with Webster University for this new master. And in particular, we were actually wondering for whether, would be interested in what format. So different option, just let us know which one would be the option that think suits you the most. So research, joint events, study visits, scientific board, intern, sponsor a student, or maybe you have, other. So very interested to find out more about your feeling about this, and then ready to answer all the questions that you might have. Just giving you couple of seconds more. Perfect. So let me share the results with our speaker. So majority research, but then we also have joint events, part of the scientific board, and then others say study visits, and then other and intern. Perfect. So believe we are ready then now to answer to some of the questions that you were asking us. So one of the questions that we received more in relation to the program itself. So they were actually asking us, what sort of students are you looking for? So in terms of, general, could be like characteristic, background, or what would be the ideal student for this program?
Yeah, I can say what I think, and then we can share. I don't think there's a ideal student for me, or the ideal student is a motivated student. And motivation comes from each person's story and each person battles. I want people who are engaged, who think this is important. They want to make a difference. They want to do something about it. And it can be from doing better research and data to working for a government, or it can be just learning about it and then being a house spouse. It can be anything for me. That it's about, I think, this key motivation of the values of our world. What world we want for the future, for our children and the children. We want a world that's green and blue and beautiful and kind and empathetic and prepared, and that's for me the key thing. I don't even, then I let my colleague who can be much less passionate and crazy about it. I think also it's the first time we launched the master, so I think people have to also be very honest and transparent. We are very honest and transparent. It's a risk that we take by also launching something new. It's always a risk when you launch something new, and that's life. It's about risk taking. It's about investing. It's about believing and doing and fighting for what you believe in. So that's for me my answer. I stop here. I let now a much more maybe organized answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. No, I mean, I think in terms of the candidates we're looking for, it could be from different backgrounds. It could be somebody who just recently finished their bachelor's, is very interested in this topic, or maybe took time off, did an internship, worked for 1 or 2 years somewhere or in the field, kind of gained awareness about the issues with regards to climate change, migration, and environment, or it could be somebody who's worked either on a local, national, international level on issues, or in an agency organization on issues concerning migration, climate change, and environment, and is basically seeking a better understanding and also obtaining tools to basically to use in a professional capacity in terms of doing their work more effectively in this realm. So it really depends. I think there is no one set type of person, but I think Dina was talking about passion. She's very passionate about her work and this topic, and I think our faculty and I'm also passionate in terms of, to be quite honest, of course, when we talk about climate change, it's primarily due to hydrocarbon emissions and all that. I myself, 30 years ago, worked in a research institute in Washington, working a lot on energy, oil, gas, and the transportation sector. And it was around the same time, around 1991, as the first COP, and became aware of the detrimental impact of hydrocarbon emissions, oil and gas emissions on the environment. And so, for example, I don't drive a car, in part because of that. So in that sense, I feel very passionate, and also from a developing country, because climate change has had a huge impact. It has not had as great an impact on countries in the Northern Hemisphere who have a temperate climate, but in countries in the Southern Hemisphere, mostly developing countries, which have arid or tropical climates, you can very easily see the impact of climate change in Latin America, in Africa, the Middle East, parts of Asia. So I think we need to be aware, we need to be passionate, and we need to take action to avert disaster.
And also one thing I thought when you were talking is that the courses will be in English. So I think that's also important just to know. I think that's part of what maybe that's part of the requirement to be able to have this. Yes. And I see now just that our colleague Françoise Maillard just also connected, and Françoise developed this course on migration and health with a focus also on climate change. So it's great that she can be also online in case there are also questions, and also that you can meet her and see her.
Thank you.
So yeah. So yeah.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Perfect. So ready to jump into some other questions. So regarding the course, so they're asking if there will be a disaster risk reduction angle covered into the program. And speaking about research, they're asking if the program have a rigorous quantitative research.
So maybe I can respond on the DRR one. So I think the DRR dimension now, when we speak, like, it's obvious that when you speak of adaptation to climate change, the other side of the coin is also disaster risk reduction. So the DRR dimension will pop up in different places in the curriculum. It will be part of the main course on migration and climate change and the environment, but we have also an environmental law specialized course, and it's beyond environmental law. It's also speaking of disaster displacement issues, and also avert, minimize, and address all disaster displacement dimensions. So there you have in the avert, you have the disaster risk reduction dimension, but there is no specific course on that. Having said this, you have UNDRR also in Geneva. And so we plan also to have a lot of exchanges with different players in Geneva. So if someone is particularly interested in this, we can then have more exchange maybe with colleagues who are at UNDRR and see how we factor in. But there's no one course on disaster risk reduction.
Yes. Yeah, if you remember the slides, and of course, as Madame Federica Coco mentioned and Dina mentioned, the slides will be shared, and one of the courses that will be part of the curriculum is a course on international disaster risk law. and also in terms of quantitative approaches, qualitative and quantitative approaches, to be equipped for this program, and of course beyond the program. We also have a course on research methods and perspectives. So, as Dina said, I think in the different courses, the syllabi in the curriculum, those who are part of the program will be exposed and learned tools in terms of quantitative analysis and also qualitative analysis, so they'll be prepared.
Perfect, thank you. Also asking us, I don't know if the Dr. Millar wanted to add anything on the...
Maybe just add something in relation with migration and health and environment. And in the syllabus of the course, you know, there is an emphasis to really develop that the students will have the possibility to develop their knowledge and understand health issue linked with the migration internally or externally, and diverse theoretical research and practice dimension. And it will be with a strong link with human sciences, nursing, psychology, medicine, economics, you know, all those disciplines, but viewed as really being interested on what was in those situations, how situational awareness arose, and that we have a lot of documents and findings and discoveries from specific investigation done with human beings who were exposed to this kind of situation, and how they show and describe the experience they lived, where the one like what they live through specific migration and concerning uncertainty, shelters, finding shelters, obstacles, resilience, unburdening regarding remoteness. And there's and also the students will be able to go and visit international organization and be really focused with the dimension that Dr. Godassi and Dr. Ionescu just sustained in terms of the diversity of lens in terms of qualitative and quantitative, and really a focus on how human beings and the choice they do and how they live their choice, and with specific way of looking at those phenomena.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lucy is asking us if you would consider this master a professional or a research master. So will it lead to like professional outcomes, as we mentioned before, or also someone that is more interested into the research side of it?
No, so we can. From my side, the outcomes are both professional and research oriented. I think that's a bit the idea too. It's a master degree, so I think at the master degree level, it's very important to open up options for students, and that's why we integrated in the curriculum the research methods very strongly, but there's this vision I mentioned in my presentation of really connecting to the professional world. But I include in the professional world also research, by the way, so it's not a contradiction of one against the other, but that's how I see. In line with that, just I'm going to repeat myself, but in terms of answering the question, maybe the person who was asking the question missed the beginning of the presentation. I don't know. As I said at the outset, with regard to our faculty, the overwhelming majority, they have advanced degrees, doctorates in their relevant fields, and they of course are still working or have worked in various international organizations, government agencies, as I said, whether it's the ICRC, UNHCR, WHO, IOM. So in that sense, in the courses, you're dealing with instructors who both know the theory and have the theory and the knowledge, but also know and basically teach the practice and the reality. So in that sense, you can go either way or both, the best of both worlds in that sense.
Perfect, thank you. During Dina's presentation, we were actually talking regarding climate change and migration. So someone is asking us if you think governments should do, what do you think they should do to address climate migration? Do you think new policies are needed? What's your opinion on this?
So this is a very tough question, but I really think that a lot can be done, and I always talk like of a fan of possible choices and options. There is no one single solution for this huge issue. No one single solution. It's impossible, in fact. So it's about numerous ways of intervention. So I really, from my work, what I saw is that part of what governments can do, but not only governments, I think that local authorities are key in this debate, and also regional authorities, as I mentioned before. But for me, there is a wide range of solutions and options that can be done really to innovate at migration level. So to develop new types of visa, to really think of entry and stay, to have services for migrants who return, and that they return with support in green jobs and green reintegration. It's about people investing diasporas maybe in disaster risk reduction options or in water rehabilitation. It's about new labor migration ways and programs. So I really think that's what governments can do, and that's why I talked about this global compact on migration. It's to put in place innovative migration solutions and also bilateral agreements, multilateral, regional agreements. So that's one space. But then you can go in each of the other spaces and think, for instance, what can be done at adaptation level, what can be done at mitigation level to take into account, for instance, migrants. What can you do in planned relocation level? What can you do at urban level to integrate migrants, for instance, or displaced population? So the wide range of solution, it's huge. And it's different areas, and it's interdisciplinary. That's why I think that vision for the program is this interdisciplinary approach, where you can really go, okay, I'm interested in health, so I will go into health, but maybe migrant services at local level in a exposed area. Or I'm interested in disaster risk reduction, so I will go into DRR work at city level for indigenous population. Yes. So I think it's you then go into, and that's what we say, it's climate action. It's all these program, projects, activities, jobs, employment opportunities, and also enterprises, creating small businesses. All it's about going into this connection and being creative also on how you approach. And I find there is more and more examples. I found now a very interesting example of an organization that integrates migrants through reforestation in Spain, for instance. Just to give you one example of very specific area where so it's open for creativity, in my view.
Yes, I concur with Dina. There is no silver bullet. Often people want just quick fixes or one solution. So as she pointed out, one needs to basically think very creatively, think very broadly, keep an open mind in terms of adopting a multi-pronged approach on different levels, whether local, national, international, to address these issues. And obviously, I mean, I'm glad the example she gave, because I firmly believe, of course, that climate change and environmental degradation are problems. But unfortunately, nowadays, I think a lot of people, and especially politicians, use migration and look at migration as something negative. And actually, migration can be used as an opportunity for the betterment of not only the host countries, but also, if done correctly, with the countries of origin and the migrants themselves. So I think that's important. I think the whole issue of migration has been politicized and is being politicized, and we see it now in elections in developed countries in North America, Europe, and elsewhere in the developing world. So I think it's that needs to be, so one needs to look at how one can basically maximize the benefits and gains from what is happening and find solutions and minimize the losses and the damage.
Yes.
And also, I think for media, I'm also very interested in the whole media and journalism and social media dimension. And I find that's what I also found very interesting in now knowing Webster better. It's also, there's the whole media department that is very active and organizes. We just had an event with the Film Festival for Human Rights. So I find extremely interesting. And I think for me, after having worked many years in IOM with media and always been asked the first question, how many climate migrants or climate refugees there are, and always trying to go to say there are nuances. And I think media is key in helping inform correctly, but also changing, as you just said, the narrative around migration. And look at the opportunities of migration. And that's also in this IPCC report I mentioned. It's also interesting. They also mentioned this, that migration can be an adaptation and that it's part of the opportunity, and that households very often resort to it. So we have to also integrate this.
Great. I can see that also Jessica is connected. I wanted to thank her for answering so many questions behind the scenes. So maybe I wanted to ask Jessica if there was maybe a couple of key points that you wanted to share with us. I saw that you share your email address, so it's actually great. Maybe a couple of notions about the program, more practical information that could be useful.
Absolutely. So actually, I think probably the most important information is that we are not able to completely assess your eligibility for the program just with a few indications. So I can only encourage you to actually reach out to us so we can identify if you are indeed eligible to apply. What we definitely need is some proven prior academic experience and a good academic performance, command of English, and there's a whole list of different requirements and admissions documents that support this. So this is a very personalized setting, so I can really only encourage you to reach out so we can identify what works, what will work or not work for you. And you can apply even with some documents only, and we can coach you through the process. So this is not an ultimatum. You can just you can apply, and we will assist you through the process. So that's really the only thing I can encourage you to do, is to get started. It's completely free of charge, so that we can identify what can work for you specifically based on your situation.
Thank you so much. I really wanted to thank Jessica. We're coming towards the end, actually, of our presentation today. So I really wanted to thank Jessica, Adina, Jubin, and Francois for being with us, for answering all of your questions for the presentation. As you can see, the team at Webster University is very much approachable. So any sort of question that you might have after the event, feel free to reach out. We will be sharing with you the recording of the event. Dina and Jubin also are going to make available the slides, which I wanted to thank you for, and we're going to share them with you. So in case you missed part of the presentation, you can rewatch it, have a look at the slides, and feel free to reach out in case you have any further questions. So thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Thank you. And we're looking forward to seeing you back soon at the next live event at Webster University. Have a look on the website in case there are some other events or activities coming up, so you can find out more about the university and the program. So thank you so much for your time, and all of you for being connected and for all of your questions. And we look forward to seeing you soon then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.